disrupted.
America that I fuck. Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. So RFK Jr. was on Piers Morgan's show to talk about Gaza, Israel, and the genocide with B. And to kind of surprise, Piers Morgan actually kind of went a bit on the defense of the Palestinians and kind of actually came with comebacks towards RFK Jr. because RFK Jr., as much as I endorse him on, I'd say 90% of the other, issues that he talks about in his campaign, and I respect him as a politician for doing that. When it comes to this particular issue is where he falls flat in his face. And this is where so many individuals, like he was on the Jimmy Dore show, Jimmy Dore was trying to, bring him to comprehension on the atrocity that Israel is committing to Palestinians, how this is all nothing to do with October 7th. This is all kind of a collaborated effort done since the 1948, since Nakba, how this has been a retaliation to pretty much exterminate Palestinians, and the entire history of this has been skewed in one direction because of powerful lobby groups, because of influence, because of this kind of globalist war economy that has peddled this war, that's peddled Israel to be this giant oppressor, and now Israel has met its match. So here's kind of went down in this interview, and it's kind of fascinating that Piers Morgan is starting to take the other side.
How do you disarm the rest of Hamas? We're not sure how many are left, but certainly thousands of them, when they're embedded now in refugee camps amongst hundreds of thousands of civilians, millions of them. And so every time you launch an offensive against them, as we saw with the apparent targeted attack on 2 Hamas terrorists in the Rafah camp, and as you saw with the rescue of these hostages, one of them led to 50 civilians being killed. The other ones led to, depending which numbers you believe, anything between 100 and 274 people being killed. So at what point does this desperation to eliminate the last members of Hamas get overtaken by the sheer volume of civilians being killed in the process, which I cannot believe will do anything longer term than foment the ideology that drove Hamas in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, you're asking a lot of questions, and I'd like you to give me time to answer them.
Sure.
And you could ask the same. You brought up Nazi Germany as a kind of an analogy for what's happening in the Mideast, and in 1945 or 44 at Casablanca, Churchill and Roosevelt had an argument because Roosevelt said we have to denazify Germany. And if we don't denazify Germany, it is going to, the Nazis are going to rise up and do the same thing again. Churchill did not want an unconditional surrender for the Nazis. He said, we'll have to kill too many civilians to do that, and everybody will fight for the death. But Roosevelt won that argument. We killed about 2 million Germans during World War.
It's also important to note post-World War II that came out of the horrific stances that came out of war was international courts, international order, to a point where countries agreed that because of the catastrophe, because of the mass slaughter of innocents, because of the destruction that caused, that countries kind of formed an alliance together to say this will never happen again, and we need to have some sort of dictation on what crosses the line of battle compared to complete genocide. We have to have some sort of ruling to describe, what's acceptable in war and what isn't. That's what kind of came out of World War II. And it just seems like what we've learned from then has now been jeopardized into current sense right now. That the international court system, the ideals of, what boundaries consists of war, has just completely thrown out the window. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we didn't really abide to any constituencies that were created post World War II. We kind of just ignored it. And one of them being the Nuremberg trial laws. That was when they hold leaders accountable for war crimes. And I remember, like, people like Noam Chomsky have stated this, that if the Nuremberg trial laws affected today, that every single administration of the United States and other allied nations that took part in horrific war crimes and has done massive devastation in all these different territories would be held to the same account we did in World War II. But we don't do that. And a lot of that has to do with corruption. A lot of that has to do with this globalist, the overall result of this is that we don't live in countries. It's only a handful of companies and the international trading of dollars. That's really what it comes down to. The 70s movie Network, if you ever seen that scene is as true now as it is then. And that is the whole point of it, is that we're just trying to bring accountability to the factor that, you're saying that you're going to wipe out Hamas. It's only for the terrorists. It's only to track down people that we know we have to deal with. But at what point, what crossed that line when you're killing mass casualties of innocent civilians? Now, of course, you look at the Twitter world, you look at, the Zionist social media accounts, and they're advocating for this because they said that, this is war. There's no boundaries when it comes to war. Well, yes, there is. Yes, there is. We created boundaries for war, because if there wasn't boundaries for war, we are exactly creating World War II. And that's what we're doing right now, because not only is Israel attacking Palestinians, they're also going after people in Lebanon. They're going after Egyptians. Other allied nations are forming alliances. The United States is also aiding Israel as they are with Ukraine and Taiwan. And now we're instituting civil war in Haiti. So we're basically cultivating World War III without even people knowing it. And this is why it comes down to the fact that we need to de-escalate this as much as possible, come to an agreement, come to ceasefire, and find a resolution to peace. And since we don't have businesses for peace anymore, because a lot of those Nazis that were defeated in World War II end up being the CEOs and the orchestrators of these businesses. So we live in a complete catastrophic oligarchy that is sacrificing us daily. And that's what's devastating about all this. It's about human lives impacted by this globalist war regime that's perpetrating these wars in order to enact an agenda of themselves onto us. And we are the sacrifice. We are the ones that get the burden of this. And in order to keep things in balance, we need to enact international court rulings on war.
World War II in order to get into Berlin and denazify it. Today, Germany is the richest country in Europe. It's one of the most powerful economies in the world. I think it's the fourth most powerful. And nobody's scared of Germany because it's a peaceful country. And today, Hamas, which is authoritarian control of, hasn't won an election in 16 years, of Gaza, is a corporate kleptocracy, and it's absolutely intent on one issue only, to just annihilate Israel and to kill all the Jews. And in their charter, Hamas has a provision that says it is against Islamic law to even negotiate with Israel except as a ruse. So I don't see how people who are saying, well, you should have a ceasefire, then what? Then what? You've rewarded Hamas for taking hostages.
No, what you do, RFK, what you do is you go to the negotiation table, you draft laws that disable the buildup of terrorist groups, because if you look at where the money is coming from, you look at how Hamas originated, which apparently RFK Jr. failed to realize, is that It was direct orders from Israel themselves to create this terrorist group. They were funneling money towards them. So if we have a ceasefire, we cut the money, we cut and investigate the rise of Hamas, and we don't allow these terrorist groups to operate because of this. Like, how is it that someone like me knows more about this than dignitaries and political officials like RFK Jr., who apparently studied this for so long? It's because they got the wrong side of history. They didn't see the full specter of things. They don't question where these terrorist groups come from. I do, because I like to know where these hell-raising, bloodthirsty, beheading baby people came from. That would be something that I would want to know. That would be something that most people want to know, where the source came from, but they don't ever ask that question because they know it leads to something even far greater evil. And that's what we're witnessing. And that's what people are calling out. They're seeing on social media that they're seeing how the sausage is made. They see where the money is flowing. They see how terrorist groups are orchestrated. Back in 2010, Hillary Clinton admitted that the reason Al-Qaeda and ISIS flourished in the Middle East is because of the United States. They were the ones that orchestrated these terrorist groups to operate in Middle Eastern countries, to do our dirty work. So maybe having a ceasefire and coming to the negotiation table to write up laws to enact so that war criminals like Benjamin Netanyahu and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris and any of these nefarious ghouls cannot cultivate any more terrorist groups to scare us would be a smart approach. That would be the start of things. But RFK Jr., I don't know, got the Zionist brainworm stuck in him to think that, if you do a ceasefire, then that means the terrorists win. That means they win. Which all that does is remind me of Afghanistan. We've been, fighting there for 20 years. And they kept telling people that, we're there to, fight Al-Qaeda. Oh, no, we're there to fight ISIS. Now it's the Taliban. And then we fought 20 years. They evacuated out of Afghanistan. And guess who came out the winner? The Taliban. The people we're supposed to be fighting turned out to be the winners after 20 plus years of war. And now they're trying to cultivate more people into saying, we got to go back to Afghanistan. Because they purposely create these terrorist groups for endless war. People are revealing the game. They're revealing the setup. That's why they're trying to take down social media accounts. That's why they're trying to silence people on college campuses. That's why they don't want talk shows or podcasters like me to say this to you. Because apparently a almost 30-year-old Canadian kid is pointing this out better than anyone in mainstream media, and they don't want people to be knowledgeable on that. Anyway, let's see the rest of this.
And they're going to keep taking hostages to get more and more advantage. And this is, by the way, the fifth ceasefire.
Yeah, and why is that the case? Why is it that they're taking more hostages, they're rejecting ceasefires? Why is it that every opportunity that they want to stop this war, that they come to peace, they refuse to do so? Maybe it's because the real war criminals, the leaders, don't want this war to end. Like Julian Assange always keeps reminding us, the point of these wars are continuous. They don't want a resolution. Even though the people of Palestine want a resolution, people of Israel want a resolution. There's people protesting by the thousands in Tel Aviv against Benjamin Netanyahu, telling people to stop this war. They don't want this war to continue on. They want some sort of peace negotiation between the Palestinians and Israelis. There has been some sort of measure on peace, but they keep rejecting that. I wonder why that is, RFK. Like, it frustrates me because you're almost there, but you don't want to reveal the big picture. And because he doesn't want to reveal the big picture is why he has to go down this rabbit hole of Zionist cult BS. And maybe it's because he's scared of what would happen if he does call this out. Maybe he's afraid Mossad will go after him. Maybe he's afraid of censorship. Maybe he's afraid of the worst case scenario because the CIA is involved in Israel. And then you know what happened when the CIA got involved with the Kennedys. Just saying.
On October 7th, they broke a ceasefire.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
So are you going to go back to that status quo?
Well, I don't think there's any future. I don't think you can have any future. I don't think you can have any future there with Hamas retaining any form of power whatsoever. Nor do I think Netanyahu.
I agree.
Nor do I think Netanyahu is a person that's going to bring peace to that region at all.
No, neither do I. You and I are agreed on that.
So it's amazing. They just admit it. Like, Netanyahu's not going to resort to peace. Hamas is not going to stop what they're doing. So we're just killing each other for the fact of just killing each other? How millions and millions of civilians on both sides are dying endlessly because... Exactly the point. Exactly the point. Which is why you have to force negotiation. Which is why you have to bring these two countries, these two territories together, get them on the negotiation table, and work out a strategy for peace. Some sort of diplomacy. And you could start by axing out the money fund that goes towards these terrorist groups. You'd start by axing the military aid that's allowing this war to continue on. We gave Israel trillions of dollars every single year. Every single year. And somehow that multi-trillion-dollar Iron Dome defense system, one of the best military defenses in the world, was not able to clamp down on people in hang gliders and F-150s? How is it that none of that ever gets investigated? How is it that still to this day, they will not report of anything of October 7th? They want us to keep reminding us about that, how horrific that is, but no investigation. They don't talk to the people that were at the events. They don't talk to the hostages that got rescued. They don't want any acknowledgement of the true situation because they want to keep the agenda afloat. They want to keep you in perpetual fear so they can advance their war powers against you. That is the whole purpose of this. And it just insanely irritates me that RFK Jr., who I agree with about 90%, 90% of RFK Jr., I fully support. Anything to do with COVID or chronic diseases or corrupt, like, I listen to him and I agree with him. And I support him about 90% of it. But this is just, I can't baffle my mind to think that RFK Jr. could be that stupid on this particular issue. It just baffles me that someone like him, an intellect like him, could just be that so stupid. So stupid that someone like me can point this out. But I'm just some, Canadian wisecracker with a podcast, shoestring podcast, who reads information and then retains that information and then tells you that information. So what would I know about the real world compared to these schmucks that are purposely giving you propaganda to paranoia you? It's so irritating.